What if an entire 150,000 years of human history had vanished without leaving a single definitive trace? Imagine a span of time so vast that it could contain the rise and fall of countless societies, the development of technologies long lost to memory, and the evolution of human thought itself, yet all of it erased from the records of our known history. This is not the plot of a science fiction novel, but a perplexing reality that challenges our understanding of the prehistoric world. Archaeologists and historians have pieced together fragments of human history with painstaking care, relying on fossils, artifacts, and the subtle imprints left in the soil. Yet, when they attempt to trace human progress across this immense stretch of time, they encounter a glaring void, a gap so deep that even the most sophisticated dating techniques and geological surveys cannot fill it. This mysterious period, spanning approximately 150,000 years, remains one of the most enigmatic puzzles in the study of human origins, a forgotten epoch that hints at stories we may never fully know. The concept of this time gap emerges from a careful analysis of human evolution and migration patterns. Scientists have detailed records of early humans hundreds of thousands of years ago, showing their gradual development from primitive hominins to species capable of crafting tools and harnessing fire. Similarly, the periods that followed the gap display clear evidence of complex behaviors, symbolic thought, and advanced technologies. But when researchers examine the layers between these known eras, there is an unsettling absence. Fossils are scarce or unidentifiable, artifacts are missing or inexplicably anomalous, and the geological record offers little to explain the sudden disappearance of information. It is as if humanity itself had stepped out of history for a time, leaving only whispers in the earth to mark its passage. This absence has fueled speculation, debate, and even controversy, because the implications are staggering. If an entire segment of human history has been lost, it would mean that much of what we accept as the story of our species is incomplete, and perhaps far simpler than the complex reality that actually unfolded. Mainstream science, for its part, has largely sidestepped the mystery, focusing instead on periods that yield clearer evidence. Archaeologists prioritize regions and eras where fossil and artifact data can be reliably interpreted, leaving the enigmatic gap largely unexplored. Some argue that the absence of evidence is simply a result of preservation bias. Environmental conditions during that period may have destroyed most traces of human activity, or the few artifacts that remain may lie buried in remote, inaccessible locations. Others suggest that the gap is not truly empty but merely misinterpreted. Ancient sites may be misdated, and existing fossils might be overlooked because they do not fit neatly into the established timeline. Yet despite these explanations, the gap remains a haunting reminder of how much we do not know. It challenges the assumption that human history is a continuous and linear progression, forcing us to consider the possibility that there are chapters of our story so lost that they are invisible to us, waiting silently beneath layers of earth, ice, and time. 150,000 years ago, the Earth was a world of extremes, a landscape both beautiful and brutal, shaped by forces far beyond human control. The planet was in the midst of a series of ice ages, massive periods of glacial expansion that pushed vast sheets of ice across continents, reshaping mountains, rivers, and coastlines. Temperatures fluctuated dramatically, alternating between harsh, frozen winters and brief, temperate interludes, creating an environment in which survival was a constant struggle. Forest deserts and grasslands expanded and contracted as the climate shifted, forcing any early humans of the period to adapt quickly or perish. Unlike today's relatively stable conditions, the land itself was unpredictable, and those who lived through it had to navigate a world that could change drastically over a single lifetime. This was a planet of contrasts, where frozen wastelands existed alongside fertile valleys, and raging storms could alter landscapes in the blink of an eye. The ice ages of this time profoundly affected sea levels, which dropped hundreds of feet as water was locked into massive glaciers. Vast stretches of land that are now submerged beneath oceans were exposed, creating migration routes and new territories for humans and animals alike. Islands that today exist as isolated fragments were once connected to continents, and coastlines that we now consider permanent were constantly reshaped. Rivers ran differently, lakes swelled and dried, and the very shape of the continent seemed to shift under the weight of glaciers and tectonic movement. These environmental factors were not just passive backdrops, they dictated where humans could live, hunt, and gather. Populations were forced to move constantly, following game and edible plants, retreating from advancing ice, or seeking refuge in temperate zones. The physical world was a masterful, often cruel architect of human survival. In this ever-changing landscape, human life would have been shaped as much by the earth as by ingenuity or culture. The harshness of the environment likely spurred the development of early technologies, clothing, and shelters to withstand cold, heat, and storm. Migration patterns would have been dictated by seasonal shifts, the rise and fall of sea levels, and the availability of resources. Groups of humans may have been separated by glaciers or forced together in narrow, habitable corridors, influencing social structures and interactions in ways we can only speculate. The distribution of flora and fauna would have determined diet and survival strategies, while natural obstacles such as mountains, rivers, and ice sheets created barriers that could isolate populations for generations. Over thousands of years, these pressures would have shaped human evolution, fostering adaptability, resilience, and innovation. Yet despite these dramatic forces, the details of human life during this period remain largely hidden, obscured by the passage of time and the destructive power of the environment itself. The evidence that does exist, a few scattered tools, isolated fossils, and remnants of shelters, offers tantalizing glimpses into a world that was both unforgiving and full of opportunity. It is a reminder that the Earth itself is a character in the story of humanity, shaping destinies long before the rise of cities, empires, or written history. The 150,000-year gap, therefore, is not simply a void in our records. It is a reflection of a planet in flux, a stage upon which countless human dramas unfolded, now almost entirely erased by ice, water, and time. Long before the familiar chapters of recorded history, humans existed in forms both strange and remarkable, wandering a world far harsher than our own. Fossils tell us that early Homo sapiens had emerged in Africa tens of thousands of years before the mysterious gap, while other human species such as Neanderthals and Denisovans inhabited Europe and Asia. These early populations were hardy, equipped with the physical and cognitive tools necessary to survive shifting climates, scarce resources, and predators that prowled every landscape. Archaeological evidence from before the 150,000-year gap reveals communities capable of crafting tools, controlling fire, and perhaps even expressing symbolic thought, hints of a developing culture that hints at intelligence approaching our own. Similarly, after the gap, humans display behaviours that suggest a level of sophistication far beyond what one might expect if history had been linear. The sudden emergence of advanced tools, complex social structures, and artistic expression after this period has led some researchers to speculate that crucial chapters of human evolution remain hidden in the shadows. Theories about lost or advanced human species have long fascinated both scientists and the public. Some argue that entire human lineages may have developed, flourished, and disappeared during this enigmatic interval, leaving only fragments of genetic or material evidence behind. These species, if they existed, could have been highly adaptive, perhaps mastering techniques of survival that were never repeated or documented. There are tantalizing hints scattered across continents, tools that appear far more sophisticated than expected for their supposed age, skeletal remains that defy classification, and unusual artifacts that seem to predate known civilizations by tens of thousands of years. Could these be traces of a forgotten human race, one that lived, learned, and vanished without leaving the clear mark of history? Such questions remain speculative, but they underscore the profound mystery of the 150,000-year void. The gap itself might conceal evolutionary milestones that fundamentally shaped modern humanity. Changes in brain structure, social organization, language development, or cultural practices could have occurred during this lost epoch, only to vanish along with their creators. Without written records, durable artifacts, or widely preserved fossils, we are left to reconstruct these events from incomplete clues. Even our genetic makeup may bear the signatures of lost populations, subtle markers that hint at interbreeding, adaptation, or extinction that conventional history has overlooked. This hidden period may have been a crucible in which humanity evolved crucial traits: advanced cognition, cooperation, and resilience that later allowed Homo sapiens to dominate diverse landscapes around the globe. Yet, for all the theories and evidence, humans during this period remain largely invisible, existing only in fragments, conjecture, and occasional anomaly. They were pioneers of survival, navigating a world dominated by ice, fire, and shifting continents, but their achievements, whatever they were erased by time, climate, and catastrophe. This absence challenges our understanding of human progress, suggesting that what we know of our ancestors is just a partial story, glimpsed through the lens of survival and fortune. The shadow of these lost humans looms over our history, a reminder that the evolution of our species is far more complex than the neat linear narratives we construct. Within the 150,000-year gap lies a hidden world of ancestors whose lives, struggles, and innovations remain mostly unseen, yet whose legacy may still ripple through us in ways we cannot yet measure. Scattered across the globe are relics that defy explanation, artifacts that refuse to fit neatly into the timelines of known human history. Simple stone tools give way to objects of astonishing complexity, crafted with precision that seems impossible for their supposed era. Megalithic structures appear in locations and at times that challenge conventional understanding, suggesting skills, knowledge, and organizational ability far beyond what historians typically attribute to prehistoric humans. Fossils sometimes emerge in geological layers that contradict established dating methods, hinting at species or populations previously unknown. These anomalies, often dismissed as errors or coincidences by mainstream archaeology, raise tantalizing questions. Could humanity, or perhaps a civilization of a forgotten human species, have existed long before we thought possible? The very existence of such artifacts challenges the notion that human progress has been a slow, linear march, instead suggesting episodes of sudden advancement that are now lost to time. Among the most compelling examples are the so-called out-of-place artifacts that appear on every continent. In Africa, tools discovered deep within layers of sediment predate what experts believe early humans could have produced. In Europe, strange carvings and skeletal remains appear in contexts that make no chronological sense. Asia offers its own mysteries, including sophisticated stone tools found in caves thought to have been abandoned for tens of thousands of years. Even in the Americas, controversial discoveries hint at human presence far earlier than the accepted timeline allows. While many of these finds remain disputed, their existence sparks debate about what might have occurred during the 150,000-year prehistoric gap. Are they mere anomalies, or are they echoes of a civilization whose traces were largely erased by natural forces or cataclysmic events? Some researchers propose that these artifacts are fragments of a forgotten human culture, one that may have mastered techniques and knowledge now lost. The precision of certain tools, the architectural ambition of megaliths, and the sophistication apparent in some carvings suggest more than the mere survival instinct. They hint at cognition, planning, and societal complexity that would have rivaled or even surpassed later known cultures. If these artifacts do belong to a lost civilization, then the evidence of their existence is faint and scattered, a puzzle scattered across time and geography. Every discovery raises more questions than answers, leaving archaeologists, historians, and enthusiasts to wonder about the full scope of human ingenuity in the remote past. Yet the study of these objects is fraught with challenges. Dating methods can be imprecise, excavation conditions unpredictable, and interpretations biased by preconceived notions of human capability. Many findings have been ignored, destroyed, or misclassified, leaving only tantalizing glimpses of a possible hidden chapter in history. Still, the anomalies persist, hinting at stories we're only beginning to imagine. The idea of forgotten civilizations, once relegated to myth and speculation, gains credence through these artifacts. They are reminders that the prehistoric world was not a simple, primitive stage of humanity, but a landscape of innovation, mystery, and lost knowledge. Perhaps, buried beneath layers of earth, ice, and time, there exists evidence of a culture that thrived, created, and vanished, its legacy encoded only in the strange, unexplainable artifacts that remain. Beneath the surface of what we see in fossils and artifacts lies an even deeper record of our past, written not in stone but in the strands of our DNA. Genetic studies over the past decades have revealed anomalies that challenge the neat narrative of human migration and evolution. There are markers in modern populations that do not correspond to any known prehistoric group, sequences that hint at interbreeding with mysterious lineages long forgotten by history. In some regions, DNA evidence suggests that humans interacted with other species or groups whose existence remains invisible in the fossil record. These traces, subtle but persistent, suggest that our family tree is far more tangled than textbooks have traditionally portrayed. One of the most compelling revelations from genetics is the existence of what some researchers call ghost lineages, human populations that contributed to our ancestry but left no identifiable fossils. Modern humans carry fragments of DNA that cannot be traced to Neanderthals, Denisovans, or any recognized species, implying the existence of unknown groups that lived and died during the prehistoric gap. The implications are staggering. Entire populations may have risen, evolved, and vanished without leaving the material evidence archaeologists rely upon. These hidden branches of humanity could explain sudden leaps in cognition, adaptability, and resilience that appear after the gap, suggesting that knowledge, survival strategies, or even social structures were inherited from ancestors now entirely lost to the record. Genetic anomalies also challenge the understanding of migration patterns. Certain markers appear in regions where early humans were not thought to exist, while expected sequences are curiously absent in areas where archaeology suggests prolonged habitation. This discrepancy hints at journeys and interactions previously unimagined, revealing routes of migration that may have been erased by environmental changes, natural disasters, or other catastrophic events. Populations may have been isolated for generations, creating unique genetic adaptations that were later absorbed into emerging human groups once climates stabilized or ice sheets receded. These silent migrations, invisible in the archaeological record, leave their only fingerprints in the DNA that quietly persists in modern populations. The study of genetic mysteries also raises profound questions about human evolution itself. Could traits that define modern humanity, problem-solving, language, social cooperation, have been shaped or accelerated by these lost lineages? Might the prehistoric gap, far from being empty, have been a crucible in which human diversity was refined, tested, and occasionally lost? DNA evidence suggests that what we see today is only the surviving tip of a far larger and more complex tree, whose branches extend into the shadows of the gap. Yet despite the promise of genetics, much remains unknown. Ancient DNA is difficult to extract, and the further back in time scientists look, the sparser the material becomes. Contamination, degradation, and gaps in sampling make definitive conclusions elusive. Still, the anomalies persist, hinting at stories that fossils and artifacts alone cannot tell. The prehistoric gap, once thought to be a void in our history, may instead be a hidden epoch, preserved quietly in our own biology. Every unusual sequence, every unexplained genetic marker is a whisper from ancestors who lived, struggled, and left their mark in ways we are only beginning to understand. The secrets of our lost lineages lie within us, waiting for the patient eye of science to uncover the truths of a time long forgotten. The Earth is a planet of extremes, and throughout its long history it has repeatedly reminded humanity of its power through catastrophes that reshape landscapes and erase civilizations. One of the most compelling explanations for the mysterious 150,000-year prehistoric gap is the possibility of global or regional cataclysms, so devastating that they obliterated evidence of entire populations. Massive volcanic eruptions, for example, could have blanketed continents in ash, destroying habitats, decimating flora and fauna, and leaving only the faintest traces of human activity. Similarly, colossal floods, perhaps triggered by melting ice sheets or sudden glacial shifts, may have submerged coastal settlements, carrying away artifacts and sedimentary records that could have told the story of human development during this forgotten epoch. Ice ages themselves were relentless forces of destruction and creation, grinding down landscapes, altering ecosystems, and forcing migrations that left little trace in the archaeological record. The idea of a global catastrophe wiping out evidence of human activity is not without precedent. Earth's history is dotted with extinction events that radically reshaped life, from the end Permian mass extinction that eliminated over 90% of species, to the more recent event that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. Though the 150,000 year gap occurred far later and involved humans, the principle is the same: dramatic, sudden environmental changes can leave vast voids in the historical record. Entire ecosystems can vanish, populations can be reduced to small, scattered groups, and cultural knowledge can disappear entirely. In this context, the missing epoch is not simply a gap in our understanding. It may reflect a period in which human and environmental catastrophes intersected in ways that made preservation nearly impossible. Evidence from known geological records supports the plausibility of such scenarios. Layers of volcanic ash, glacial deposits, and anomalous sedimentary formations hint at dramatic shifts in climate and landscape during this period. Ice sheets advanced and retreated, creating barriers that isolated populations for generations, while storms, earthquakes, and tsunamis could have obliterated settlements along coastlines and river valleys. Even a single catastrophic event, compounded over decades or centuries, could have erased the physical traces of human activity, leaving only subtle hints in scattered artifacts or genetic traces. This destruction might help explain why the prehistoric gap appears so stark and why our knowledge of the period remains so incomplete. The potential impact of such catastrophes extends beyond the mere disappearance of artifacts. Human populations themselves would have faced immense pressure, with survival dependent on adaptability, cooperation, and innovation. Some groups may have perished entirely, while others survived only in remote or protected regions, carrying knowledge that would resurface long after the worst of the destruction had passed. These cycles of devastation and recovery could have accelerated evolutionary processes, shaping intelligence, resilience, and social behaviors that define Homo sapiens today. In contemplating the lost 150,000 years, catastrophes and extinction events offer a hauntingly plausible explanation for the silence in our records. They suggest a world in which humanity's story was repeatedly interrupted, where entire chapters were erased by forces beyond human control, leaving us with fragments, whispers, and anomalies. This lost epoch may have been shaped as much by survival against the elements as by the ingenuity of humans, a reminder that history is not always linear, and that the Earth itself is an active participant in the story of life. Long before the invention of writing, humanity preserved its history not on paper or stone, but through stories passed from generation to generation. Legends, myths, and folklore served as vessels of memory, encoding events, knowledge, and warnings within narrative forms that could survive even the harshest of times. Some researchers suggest that these oral traditions may contain echoes of the mysterious 150,000 year prehistoric gap, fragments of human experience that were never written down, but nevertheless survived in the collective memory of our ancestors. Tales of lost civilizations, catastrophic floods, or golden ages of abundance may be more than fanciful storytelling. They might represent distorted recollections of events that occurred long before the dawn of recorded history. These myths, repeated and reshaped over millennia, could hold clues to a world that has otherwise vanished from the archaeological record. Flood myths are among the most striking examples of this phenomenon. From the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to the stories of Noah in the Hebrew Bible, nearly every culture carries a memory of a great deluge, a sudden and catastrophic inundation that reshaped the land and altered the course of human history. While many scholars view these stories as symbolic or moralistic, others propose they may be cultural memories of real events: rising seas following glacial melting, tsunamis, or massive river floods that destroyed early settlements. If such events occurred during the 150,000 year gap, they could have wiped away entire communities and much of the physical evidence of human activity, leaving only oral traditions to preserve the memory of what was lost. In this sense, myths function as echoes of a forgotten epoch, a bridge between a vanished past and the societies that would emerge later. Beyond floods, countless legends recount civilizations of extraordinary skill, knowledge, and prosperity, golden ages that vanished mysteriously. Stories of advanced people, living in harmony with nature, or possessing technologies that seem impossible appear in cultures across the globe. These tales often share remarkable similarities: great cities swallowed by disasters, secret knowledge preserved in sacred texts or hidden locations, and survivors who carry the wisdom of lost eras into the new world. Could these narratives be faint reflections of societies that existed during the prehistoric gap? If so, they represent an extraordinary method of preservation, one in which human memory has served as a repository of history even when physical evidence could not survive. Oral traditions also reflect a sophisticated understanding of cause, consequence, and morality, encoded into stories to ensure survival and social cohesion. By embedding lessons within narrative, early humans could transmit knowledge across generations, preserving the memory of survival strategies, environmental changes, and catastrophes. This practice might explain why myths from vastly separated regions contain strikingly similar motifs, suggesting shared experiences or parallel observations of events that occurred during the lost epoch. The 150,000-year gap, therefore, may not be entirely silent. It whispers through the myths and stories that have shaped human culture, hinting at a forgotten world that once existed and continues to influence us in ways we barely recognize. One of the most confounding aspects of the 150,000-year prehistoric gap is the difficulty scientists face in pinpointing when events occurred, or even confirming their existence at all. Dating ancient remains and artifacts is a cornerstone of archaeology and paleontology, yet for this enigmatic period, conventional methods often fall short. Carbon dating, for instance, is effective only for materials up to around 50,000 years old, leaving older organic remains outside its reliable range. When researchers attempt to push beyond this limit, results become imprecise or contradictory, offering broad estimates that fail to provide a clear chronological framework. Other methods, such as potassium-argon dating, uranium-thorium techniques, or thermoluminescence, depend on specific conditions of the sample and environment, and even small disturbances in soil layers can drastically alter results. In this way, the very tools designed to illuminate the past often leave the 150,000-year gap in near total darkness. The preservation of fossils and artifacts further complicates the picture. Organic material deteriorates over time, leaving behind only fragments of bones, teeth, or plant matter. Even stone tools or pottery, which can endure far longer, are subject to displacement, erosion, or burial in contexts that make accurate dating difficult. Sediment layers, once thought to offer a reliable record of chronological succession, are often disrupted by natural processes such as flooding, earthquakes, or glacial movements. As a result, items discovered in these layers may appear older or younger than they truly are, producing misleading interpretations of human activity. For the prehistoric gap, these challenges are magnified. Evidence may exist, but it is buried, destroyed, or altered in ways that prevent definitive dating. Moreover, the scarcity of findings from this period creates a feedback loop of uncertainty. Scientists rely on patterns and correlations to construct timelines, but when evidence is sparse, conclusions become tentative. A single fossil in isolation, or an anomalous tool, may raise more questions than answers. Without corroborating data from multiple sites or layers, researchers cannot confidently place events, species, or cultural developments within a precise time frame. This lack of certainty has led some archaeologists to effectively ignore the gap, focusing instead on periods that provide clearer and more verifiable records. Ironically, the very methods that have advanced our understanding of human history simultaneously render this epoch nearly invisible. The 150,000-year gap, then, is as much a problem of methodology as it is a mystery of history. The limitations of dating techniques, coupled with environmental destruction and the passage of immense spans of time, leave this period largely uncharted. It is a reminder that our grasp of the past is contingent not only on the survival of evidence, but also on our ability to interpret it. The gaps in our knowledge are not necessarily gaps in human activity. They may be gaps in the tools, methods, and conditions that allow us to perceive it. In this way, the undatable nature of the epoch preserves its enigma, challenging scientists to rethink assumptions, develop new techniques, and consider that an entire chapter of human history may be waiting silently, hidden just beyond the reach of modern investigation. The 150,000-year prehistoric gap has long been a battleground of ideas, where mainstream scholarship and alternative theories clash over the interpretation of scant evidence. Mainstream archaeologists, bound by rigorous standards of proof, emphasize the importance of verifiable artifacts, stratigraphy, and reproducible dating methods. From their perspective, the absence of clear evidence during this vast stretch of time simply indicates that humans were few, scattered, and relatively primitive, leaving little for the archaeological record to preserve. They argue that speculation beyond what can be demonstrated risks distorting the history of our species. Yet, this cautious approach has often placed mainstream science at odds with researchers and enthusiasts who believe the gap conceals far more than mere absence. Fringe perspectives, though frequently dismissed, propose bold and provocative ideas. Some archaeologists and independent researchers suggest that advanced human civilizations may have existed during the gap, achieving technological, social, or cultural complexity lost to the ravages of time. Others posit that unknown human species, entirely separate from Homo sapiens, could have flourished in certain regions, influencing later populations through interbreeding or cultural transmission. These theories rely on anomalous artifacts, unexplained structures, or genetic oddities as evidence, interpreting what mainstream science might consider outliers as fragments of a hidden history. While controversial, these ideas underscore the tension between what is accepted and what might be possible, highlighting the limits of conventional approaches to the past. Many discoveries that challenge established timelines are ignored, misclassified, or outright dismissed, often because they do not fit prevailing models. Archaeology, like all sciences, relies on consensus to validate findings, but this consensus can also suppress anomalies that contradict long-held beliefs. Tools that appear far older than expected, fossils found in improbable layers, and unusual artifacts are frequently subjected to intense scrutiny, and in the absence of conclusive corroboration, they are relegated to the margins of study. The process ensures methodological rigor, but can also stifle inquiry into possibilities that lie outside accepted narratives. Consequently, the 150,000-year gap remains both a void in the archaeological record and a flashpoint for debate, with competing camps arguing over the meaning of absence itself. The controversy surrounding the gap reflects broader questions about human history. How much of our story is truly known, and how much remains speculative? Could the silence in the record represent destruction, neglect, or even deliberate loss of knowledge? For some researchers, exploring alternative theories is not an exercise in fantasy, but a necessary challenge to orthodox assumptions. The willingness to consider radical ideas, even tentatively, acknowledges that human history may be far richer, more complex, and more mysterious than textbooks suggest. In this interplay of skepticism and speculation, the prehistoric gap endures as a symbol of uncertainty and possibility. It reminds us that history is not merely a catalogue of what has survived, but a dynamic story shaped by discovery, interpretation, and imagination. While mainstream perspectives maintain caution, alternative theories provoke curiosity, suggesting that the lost 150,000 years may hold secrets of civilizations, migrations, and knowledge that lie just beyond our current reach, waiting for evidence that can withstand both scrutiny and wonder. Even though the 150,000-year prehistoric gap remains shrouded in mystery, traces of this lost epoch may still echo through modern civilization in ways both subtle and profound. Fragments of knowledge, skill, and experience from that distant past could have survived, passed down through generations in altered forms, influencing the development of later societies. Some researchers suggest that architectural innovations, artistic motifs, or engineering principles found in ancient civilizations may contain echoes of techniques inherited from forgotten peoples long before the first cities arose. The precision of certain megalithic constructions, the alignment of structures with astronomical phenomena, and unexplained patterns in early settlements hint at understanding and expertise that could have roots in human experiences during the prehistoric gap. These remnants, while scattered and often enigmatic, suggest that humanity's story is not solely a product of linear progress, but a tapestry woven from fragments of forgotten knowledge. Myths and oral traditions may serve as another bridge between the lost epoch and modern civilization. Stories of golden ages, advanced peoples, great floods, and cataclysmic events, shared across continents and cultures, could be distorted memories of real occurrences, encoded into narrative form to preserve survival lessons and cultural identity. Even if the original events were exaggerated, misremembered, or transformed over thousands of years, the consistent appearance of similar motifs suggests a shared human memory that stretches back far beyond the historical record. These narratives remind us that human beings have long sought to understand the forces that shape their world, preserving knowledge through story when written records did not exist. It is possible, then, that elements of the lost epoch subtly influenced how societies approached agriculture, settlement, social organization, and even spiritual understanding. Unexplained artifacts and anomalies in the archaeological record may also carry the faint fingerprints of this hidden past. Items that defy dating, tools of unexpected sophistication, and unusual constructions hint at intelligence and creativity that we cannot yet fully comprehend. While their origins remain uncertain, these relics suggest that innovation and cultural complexity may have existed long before the historical milestones recognized today. Even small fragments of material culture could have seeded ideas, techniques, or traditions that eventually re-emerged in ways we now take for granted. The lost epoch, though silent in the record, may have quietly shaped the trajectory of human civilization, leaving traces that only careful study and imaginative inquiry can begin to reveal. Ultimately, the enduring mystery of the 150,000-year gap forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge. Will we ever uncover the full story? Perhaps the Earth has swallowed too much evidence, or perhaps the records lie scattered, waiting to be discovered in caves, sediments, or the very DNA of living populations. Yet even in the absence of complete answers, the echoes of this lost time continue to inspire wonder, speculation, and the pursuit of knowledge. The gap reminds us that history is not merely a catalogue of what survives, but a complex interplay of discovery, loss, and memory. Humanity's past, it seems, is far deeper and stranger than we have yet imagined, and within the silence of the lost epoch may lie lessons, innovations, and stories that still shape who we are today. The first signs of morning arrive quietly, long before the sun fully reveals itself. A thin band of pale light spreads across the horizon, and the land begins to shift from darkness into shape. Tall grasses stir as the night air loosens its grip, and distant animals signal the change with low calls and sudden movement. Within a small cluster of bodies resting close together, eyes open not because they are told to, but because the world itself is stirring. There are no boundaries separating rest from wilderness. Rising happens slowly. Stiff limbs stretch, and the group becomes aware of empty stomachs before words are needed. Hunger is not alarming. It is expected, a reliable companion each morning. Attention turns outward almost immediately, scanning the land for signs of opportunity. Some move toward known patches where edible roots and fruits sometimes appear after rain. Others prepare for longer movement, checking the edges of stone tools shaped earlier and carried from place to place. There is no announcement of roles. Each person understands what is needed, because they have lived this pattern since childhood. As they move through the grass, cooperation unfolds without sound. A raised hand slows the group. A glance directs attention to disturbed earth or broken stems. Tools are not possessions but extensions of shared knowledge, stones chosen, shaped, and used with intention, passed down through watching rather than instruction. When food is found, it is handled carefully, tested, and divided without ceremony. Success is modest but enough to keep the day moving forward. Failure, when it happens, is accepted just as calmly. As the sun climbs higher, its heat presses down, changing the rhythm of movement. Activity eases as the group drifts toward a place where trees cast wide shadows. Here, bodies lower themselves to the ground, and the pace of thought slows. This pause is not laziness, it is understanding. Energy is preserved, wounds are tended, and the youngest rest while elders remain alert. Even in stillness, attention never fully fades. The land is watched not with fear, but with respect for its unpredictability. The afternoon brings quiet vigilance. Small signs matter: the sudden silence of birds, the direction of wind, the distant movement of large shapes. Danger is rarely dramatic, but it is always possible. Everyone shares the responsibility of noticing. Knowledge of the land lives in memory, where water collects, where predators pass, where safety can be found if movement becomes necessary. This awareness has been built slowly, day after day, across generations who learned the same lessons. As light softens and lengthens, the group draws inward. Fire is prepared where it has burned before, using embers carefully protected from the night prior. Flames rise, bringing warmth and a sense of boundary against the dark. Around this glow, the day's experiences are acknowledged through gestures, expressions, and repeated motions. Stories are not told as long narratives, but as fragments, reminders of past events, warnings, successes, and losses. Children watch closely, absorbing meaning not from words but from tone and repetition. When darkness fully settles, bodies arrange themselves near the fading fire. The sky returns vast and familiar, filled with points of light that have watched over countless nights like this one. Sleep comes not as escape, but as continuation. Tomorrow will follow a similar path, shaped by the same needs and the same land, yet always slightly different. Another ordinary day has passed, carrying humanity forward without anyone knowing it. Morning begins with warmth spreading across skin rather than sound. As the sun lifts itself above the edge of the land, eyes open one by one, adjusting to the growing brightness. The ground is cool, marked by footprints and pressed grass from the night before. Young children move first, shifting closer to familiar bodies, drawn by instinct rather than fear. Older members remain still for longer, observing the surroundings before committing to movement. Their role is not command but awareness, shaped by years of noticing what others overlook. The group gathers itself slowly, guided by the simple fact of need. Hunger shapes the day before any decision is made. There is no certainty that food will be found, and this knowledge lingers quietly among them. Some prepare to move farther, adjusting grips on worn tools, while others remain closer to camp, knowing that not every effort requires distance. A small hunting party slips away with measured steps, following paths shaped by animals rather than people. There is no excitement in their departure, only focus. Tracking demands time more than strength. The hunters lower themselves often, studying the ground where hooves or paws have pressed into soft earth. They read signs left behind hours earlier: a bent stem, a scuffed stone, a faint trail where grass has not yet risen. Progress is slow and deliberate. Each step is considered, not because the chase is dramatic, but because haste wastes energy. The possibility of returning empty-handed is always present, and it tempers every movement. Closer to where the day began, others move through familiar terrain, selecting what the land is willing to offer. Roots are loosened carefully, fruits examined for safety, insects collected without judgment. Knowledge guides these choices, built from long observation rather than instruction. What is taken today must not prevent tomorrow. The land is not challenged or controlled, only negotiated with through experience. When food is found, whether through tracking or gathering, it returns to the group without celebration. Distribution happens through habit. The youngest are served first, then those whose bodies no longer move easily, and finally the rest. On days when food is scarce, there is no argument. Hunger is endured together, and the absence of food is treated as part of life rather than failure. Strength is measured not by fullness, but by survival through lean moments. Throughout the day, children absorb everything without being addressed directly. They watch hands shape tools, observe which plants are avoided, and note how attention shifts when the land changes tone. There are no lessons given in words. Learning happens through closeness and repetition, through mistakes made small enough to survive. By the time understanding is needed, it already exists. As the sun lowers, movement draws inward again. Bodies cluster closer, responding to the changing light and cooling air. Safety becomes a shared instinct, not discussed but understood. Shelter is chosen carefully, fire tended if it exists, and the group settles into stillness. Night arrives without ceremony, wrapping the land in darkness. Within that darkness, awareness remains, quiet and alert, until sleep claims it. Another day ends, shaped entirely by hunger and the path of the sun. The day begins not with movement, but with assessment. Before anyone rises fully, eyes trace the edges of the clearing, the nearby brush, the distant rise of land, where shadows still linger. Nothing dramatic is expected, yet nothing is ignored. Survival depends on noticing what has changed since nightfall. A scent carried by the wind, disturbed ground, or the absence of usual sounds can signal danger. Only after this quiet examination does the group begin to stir, satisfied that the morning holds no immediate threat. When they move, they follow routes worn into memory rather than the ground itself. These paths are not marked, yet everyone knows them. The safest ways through tall grass, the places where footing is firm, the narrow passages that offer escape if needed. Though the land appears untamed, it is deeply familiar. Each turn and pause reflects knowledge built through countless days that looked much like this one. What may seem repetitive is in truth refinement. The actions that fill the hours are the same ones performed by those who came before. Searching, shaping, carrying, and adjusting fill the day without urgency. There is no sense of monotony, because the routine itself is survival. Each small task carries weight. A stone flaked correctly lasts longer. A tool misplaced may never be replaced. Objects are few, but their value lies in what they enable: food, protection, continuity. Much of the day is spent in movement that appears uneventful. Walking stretches between moments of action. Waiting sharpens attention. Watching teaches patience. These are not empty spaces, but necessary ones. Stillness allows listening. Slow progress prevents mistakes. The land rewards those who do not rush it. In this rhythm, effort is measured carefully against energy, and nothing is wasted. Risk is never dramatic, yet it is always present. A misstep, a wrong decision, or a moment of distraction can separate life from death. This shared vulnerability binds the group more tightly than any spoken agreement. Trust forms not through promises but through consistency. Each person knows the others will respond when needed, because they always have. These bonds are tested daily, strengthened quietly through cooperation rather than conflict. As light fades, attention turns to the place where fire will be kept alive. It is not treated as a marvel, but as something essential and familiar. Flames offer warmth, discourage unseen dangers, and create a center around which the group gathers. The fire's glow softens the edges of the world, making space for rest. Hands move close to its heat, scars and calluses catching the light, evidence of lives shaped by effort. When night settles fully, bodies lower themselves near one another, positioned for both comfort and alertness. Sleep comes lightly, shaped by instinct rather than ease. Even in rest, awareness remains near the surface, ready to rise if needed. Tomorrow will ask for the same attention, the same patience, the same routine. Survival continues not through heroic acts, but through doing these ordinary things well again and again. Life unfolds without accumulation, Nothing is gathered for the sake of keeping, and nothing is held that cannot be carried easily. What endures is not material but mental, an understanding of seasons, animals, plants, and patterns written into memory rather than stored in objects. This knowledge is light enough to move with the group, yet heavy enough to shape every decision. It defines where they go, how long they stay, and when it is time to leave. The few tools that exist are chosen carefully and remain close at hand. They travel with the people who rely on them, shaped to fit a grip, worn smooth through repeated use. When a tool breaks, it is remade if possible or abandoned without hesitation. There is no sense of loss in letting go. Tools serve a moment, not a future imagined far ahead. What matters is usefulness now, not preservation. Food follows the same logic. It is taken when found and shared quickly, never hidden away for later days. The land decides what is available, and the group adapts accordingly. Eating happens when opportunity allows, and hunger returns when it must. This way of living leaves little room for anxiety about tomorrow. Attention remains fixed on the present, where survival is actually negotiated. There are no permanent structures marking ownership or return. Shelter appears where it is needed and disappears just as easily. Branches, hides, and natural formations offer protection for a short time, then are left behind without ceremony. The absence of fixed dwellings makes movement easier, and movement itself becomes a habit rather than a response. Staying too long risks depletion or danger, leaving ensures renewal. Days pass without being counted. Time is not divided into units, but felt through change, light shifting, temperature rising, shadows lengthening. There is no urgency to mark progress or measure age. Life is experienced as a continuous flow rather than a sequence. Memory stretches backward through stories and observation, but the future remains undefined, shaped only by the next need. As the day fades, the group finds itself close again, not by design but by instinct. The same bodies that scattered earlier now gather in familiar proximity. Sharing space offers reassurance in a world that offers little certainty. The absence of possessions leaves room for connection. What one person knows or notices benefits all. When darkness settles, rest comes without separation. The day ends much as it began, grounded in togetherness rather than place. Nothing has been added, nothing stored away. Yet everything necessary has been carried forward. Knowledge, trust, and the quiet understanding of how to live lightly within a demanding world. The day unfolds without any sense of importance, yet it is shaped by decisions that quietly matter. Each action, no matter how small, carries weight beyond the moment. A hand hesitates before striking stone, adjusting the angle by instinct rather than calculation. The result is a sharper edge, barely noticeable at first, but easier to use and slower to dull. No one marks this improvement, yet it will influence every task that follows. Such changes slip into daily life unnoticed, accumulating over time. Movement through the land brings constant opportunities for choice. A path is altered slightly to avoid loose ground. A sound in the distance draws attention sooner than it might have before. When danger reveals itself, a warning comes faster, cutting through the air and redirecting the group just in time. No discussion follows. The moment passes, absorbed into memory as another example of what works and what does not. Survival leaves little room for reflection, yet experience is never wasted. Nearby, a child watches everything. There is no formal teaching, only proximity. Small hands mimic the motions they observe, striking stones that chip incorrectly, lifting tools that feel awkward. Failure is part of learning, accepted without correction, unless it becomes dangerous. Over time, movement becomes smoother, decisions quicker, knowledge transfers silently, carried forward not through instruction, but through imitation repeated again and again. Fire remains a steady presence, not as a marvel, but as a responsibility. Embers are guarded carefully, fed when needed, shielded from wind and rain. No one claims credit for its existence. What matters is that it continues. It dries food, warms bodies, and creates a sense of safety after darkness falls. Maintaining it requires attention, and that attention becomes habit. Losing it would mean more effort tomorrow, so it is protected today. As the day progresses, memories form without intention. Successful actions are remembered in the body, not the mind. Hands recall how much force is needed. Eyes recognize patterns in movement and terrain. These memories are not recorded or spoken aloud, yet they persist, shaping future behavior. The past is carried forward through repetition rather than story. When evening arrives, the group settles with the quiet satisfaction of having endured. No achievements are celebrated, no milestones marked. Another cycle has been completed. The day has altered the future in ways no one can see, adding small refinements to how life is lived. Survival itself is the outcome, and that is enough. Humanity moves forward not through grand moments, but through days like this one, ordinary and unremarkable, yet full of consequence. Morning begins in stillness. Long before movement overtakes the land, eyes open not in haste, but with a purpose shaped by anticipation. Decisions have already formed in silence. Which direction to travel, where the ground will be safest, what tasks will take priority. There is no conversation to begin the day. Planning exists as thought woven into every body, each gesture anticipating the next action follows naturally, guided by foresight rather than command. As they move, the land itself becomes a text to be read. Tracks pressed into soft soil, broken stems, and scattered stones all carry meaning. Each footprint tells a story of animals that passed hours ago, where they came from, where they might go, how fast, and in what state. Reading these signs demands patience and focus. Understanding them is not instinct alone, but experience layered over generations. Knowledge accumulates quietly in the minds of those who observe, shaping every step. Hands and fingers know the world intimately. Leaves, roots, and seeds are recognized by touch, weight, and texture rather than sight alone. Plants are not simply food or danger. They are markers of seasons, signals of water, and tools for survival. The ability to discern these differences quickly separates opportunity from misstep. It is a skill passed not by lecture but through proximity. The young mimic motions, feeling what the elders feel, slowly building a sense of what is safe, what is nourishing, what is best left untouched. Strength is measured less in muscle than in coordination and timing. Tasks that could be completed by force are instead accomplished through shared effort. One guides, another lifts, a third steadies, all moving together without instruction. Cooperation outweighs brute effort, because survival depends on harmony more than power. The group moves as one organism, responding to the world collectively, aware that individual might alone cannot meet the challenges of a shifting environment. Knowledge transfers without speech. Hands, eyes, and bodies teach more than words could. A demonstration of how to scrape a stone, lift a root, or secure fire communicates lessons that are remembered through doing rather than repetition. Watching and imitating forms the core of education, silently shaping understanding in the young and reinforcing skill in the experienced. The group functions as a living classroom, its lessons embedded in action and repetition. Fire is neither spectacle nor luxury. It is a shared responsibility, its warmth and smoke woven into the rhythm of the day. Everyone contributes, some tending embers, others adding fuel, all mindful of its fragility and importance. Its presence is a signal of order within the wild, a reminder of the group's collective care. When darkness comes, thought does not cease. Minds replay movements planned for tomorrow and integrate lessons of the day into memory. Dreams are extensions of vigilance and reflection, continuing the quiet work begun at first light. Life is measured in these subtle processes, a network of observation, cooperation, and attention that moves slowly but decisively toward mastery over circumstance. The intelligence of early humans lies not in words but in the depth of these unseen understandings. The day begins without certainty. Light spills over the horizon, revealing a world that offers neither promise nor warning beyond what the senses can detect. Each morning carries the same unknowns as the last, whether food will be found, whether the paths ahead are safe, whether the small signs of animals or weather will be in their favor. No one speaks of these possibilities. They are understood, carried silently by every movement and glance. The unknown is not feared, it is simply present, shaping each decision and step. Hunger is immediate, insistent, and impartial. It drives movement before curiosity or play can intervene. Searching for roots, fruits, or small game occupies hands and eyes, and the body responds instinctively to the need for energy. There is no room for delay. Every choice is weighed against the possibility of empty stomachs. Every motion a negotiation with the land. Hunger is not lamented. It is a quiet motivator, reminding the group that life is contingent on effort and attention. Even as they move, danger is never absent. Predators, weather, or unseen threats exist in the background of every action. They are never front and center, yet they are acknowledged continuously through posture, alert eyes, and the arrangement of bodies within the group. Listening, scanning, and adjusting become habitual. Awareness does not tire, because complacency carries real consequences. Life persists only when vigilance matches need. Trust within the group forms the foundation of movement and decision. Everyone knows that others will act without being told, that warnings will be raised when necessary, and that support will appear in moments of strain or misstep. Cooperation arises from experience rather than instruction. It is embedded in routine. Bonds are strengthened by the shared understanding that each life depends on the reliability of others. Loss occurs with regularity. A missed hunt, a wounded companion, or the disappearance of someone from the group is neither dramatic nor ceremonial. There are no rituals to process grief. Acknowledgement is quiet, almost internal. Survival is measured not in what is mourned, but in what continues. Continuity itself becomes the marker of success. Each small triumph of persistence matters more than any recognition. Evening does not guarantee comfort. Shelter is chosen carefully, fire is protected, and bodies rest with one eye and ear tuned to the night. Sleep is not assumed, it is earned. Only when the body has endured hunger, navigated danger, and maintained vigilance does rest come fully. And even then lightly, because tomorrow will demand the same attention. In this way, every ordinary day carries the weight of the extraordinary. The simple act of living through it is itself an achievement, shaping knowledge, skill, and the quiet resilience that will carry humanity forward. From the first light of morning, the smallest members of the group are close to adult bodies, carried against warm skin or nestled in simple slings of hide. They move with the rhythm of the day, never abandoned, always observed. Their presence shapes the pace of activity. Steps are measured, hands are careful, and gestures are deliberate. Even before they can walk or speak, these children absorb the patterns of survival, learning not through instruction, but through constant proximity to action. Observation is the earliest form of education. Small hands mimic motions, eyes follow repeated gestures, and curiosity guides tentative experimentation. A child crouches beside an elder, shaping a tool, touching the edge, feeling the balance and resistance, and learning its potential without needing words. Every motion is a lesson, every mistake a safe opportunity to understand cause and effect. Knowledge is transferred quietly, woven into the daily rhythm rather than formalized in speech. Play mirrors the serious tasks of survival. Children dig in the soil, lift stones, and move sticks in imitation of hunting or building. Even laughter and tumbling carry instruction, understanding weight, timing, and coordination, refining motor skills that will later be essential for gathering, carrying, or defending. What looks like amusement is preparation. The games of youth are practice for the realities of adult life. Elders guide subtly. A hand adjusts posture. A gaze directs attention. A slow demonstration reveals technique. Nothing is demanded or corrected harshly. The young are encouraged to repeat, to explore, and to internalize lessons at their own pace. The wisdom of age flows not in command but in example. Through these silent interventions, children absorb not only skill but also values, patience, awareness, and respect for the land and the group. Food distribution reinforces this hierarchy of care. The youngest are fed first, their needs anticipated before those of others. This is not indulgence, but recognition of vulnerability and investment in the future. They learn the importance of sharing, of responsibility, and the implicit trust that the group will provide protection and sustenance. Hunger is managed collectively, and the rhythm of giving teaches balance and empathy. When evening arrives, the group gathers around the fire, and the youngest settle close. Shadows flicker across faces, and stories are enacted more than spoken, gestures and sounds carrying meaning that is absorbed naturally. Tales of hunts, close calls, and past successes are repeated not for entertainment alone, but to anchor identity. Children learn where they belong, how the group functions, and what it means to live within this shared world. As night deepens, bodies curl near one another, and the youngest fall asleep to warmth, motion, and subtle narrative rhythms. Through observation, play, and gentle guidance, they have absorbed the essential patterns of life. Each ordinary day passes as both practice and inheritance, ensuring that the knowledge, skills, and identity of the group are carried forward into the next generation. Light shifts over the horizon, and the day begins not with a voice or bell, but with the rising sun itself. Its early rays touch the faces of those who have slept under open skies, signaling the start of activity. Eyes adjust to the brightness, and bodies rise in response to the subtle cues of warmth and illumination. There is no schedule imposed, no abstract measure of hours. Time is defined entirely by the movement of the sun and the changing patterns of light across the land. As the sun climbs, heat becomes a silent regulator. Activity slows in its intensity, and bodies seek shade where it is offered. Rest is dictated not by desire, but by necessity. The ground, the breeze, and the open sky shape the rhythm of labor. Those who ignore the signals of the natural world risk exhaustion or misstep. Even the most urgent tasks are tempered by the awareness that energy is finite and must be conserved according to environmental cues. Shadows govern decisions as much as sunlight. The position of trees, rocks, and hills signals where movement is safest, where the ground is firmest, and when the heat will become oppressive. Choices are made in relation to these shifting markers. A place that offers shelter in the morning may become unbearably hot by noon. Awareness of these patterns allows for efficient travel, hunting, and gathering, ensuring that effort aligns with the demands of the environment rather than against it. Seasons impose a longer-term order on the day. Rainfall, flowering, migration, and temperature dictate where the group can move and what sustenance is available. Water must be found, game followed, and plants collected at the appropriate moment. Life is a negotiation with these cycles. Preparation for change is built into the daily routine, even if the group does not name the months or mark the passage of time formally. Adaptation is constant, and planning is informed by careful observation rather than prediction. Control is an illusion, and the group lives in quiet acceptance of this reality. The land cannot be commanded, the weather cannot be altered, and wild animals cannot be restrained. Instead, the day is structured around flexibility, moving when needed, pausing when prudent, and taking advantage of every opportunity without forcing it. Success is measured by endurance and responsiveness, not by imposing will upon the environment. Nightfall arrives as both signal and caution. Darkness announces a pause in activity, a time to gather close, and an occasion for vigilance. It marks safety in proximity to fire or shelter, yet danger in what cannot be seen. The group adjusts instinctively, finding warmth and security while remaining alert. Sleep becomes an act of trust in the shared knowledge that survival depends on understanding and responding to the cycles that govern all life. In a world ruled entirely by nature's clock, every movement, every pause, and every choice is a reflection of the quiet authority of the sun, the heat, the shadows, and the unyielding march of the seasons. Morning opens as it always has, with pale light spilling across familiar terrain. The same contours of earth, the same rising shapes of hills and trees, greet eyes that have seen countless dawns like this one. Movements are predictable yet precise. Bodies stretch, awaken, and gather without instruction, repeating gestures that have been performed for generations. To an outsider, it may seem monotonous, but each motion carries the quiet weight of survival honed over lifetimes. The work of the day unfolds with subtle variation. Stones are shaped a fraction more efficiently, fire is coaxed with slightly better technique, traps are set with attention informed by years of observation. Each small refinement seems minor in the moment, almost imperceptible, yet these incremental improvements accumulate, carrying forward wisdom that is never formally recorded. In this way, knowledge grows slowly, almost invisibly, embedded in hands, eyes, and memory. Life is measured in repetition rather than innovation. There is no concept of progress in the abstract. Each generation experiences the day as it comes, expecting the rhythm to continue and relying on patterns observed from those who came before. Awareness of history or achievement does not guide behavior. Instead, repetition itself secures continuity. By acting consistently, humans shape their world and adapt to it, even without reflection or conscious ambition. Movement, foraging, hunting, and tending to fire occupy hours that stretch without variation in form, but not in detail. Every choice made today has echoes of countless prior days. The land and its resources are known intimately, and responses to its challenges are guided by instincts refined over uncounted iterations of this same day. Survival does not rely on sudden brilliance, but on consistent engagement and careful observation repeated endlessly. Children imitate adults as they have for millennia, unaware of the lineage of behavior they inherit. The young absorb skill and awareness naturally, carrying forward patterns that will themselves become ordinary to the next generation. Humanity is forming in this repetition, not through dramatic events, but through small, continuous acts of adaptation, cooperation, and endurance. Evening draws the group together in familiar spaces. Fire is maintained, food shared, bodies rested. The sky darkens in patterns that have been the same for ages. Tomorrow is assumed, expected, but never guaranteed. Each night ends with both continuity and uncertainty, with sleep earned only by attentiveness and care. Through these cycles, one day blends into the next. What seems ordinary, even repetitive, is the foundation upon which humanity is built. Civilization has not yet been imagined, yet the careful, uncelebrated actions of countless days shape the mind, the body, and the social bonds that will carry humans forward. Life continues, persistent and unnoticed, each day both like the last and subtly different.